All right, so before we actually start in the slideshow, which if you'll guess, if you had to guess where the slideshow was, where would you guess the slideshow that we're going to go over is? Right here where it says levels of organization. Normally that's where I put it. And we're also going to look at these two videos towards the end of class. There's a YouTube video there and a YouTube video there. So here's the slideshow we'll go through, and this is where you're going to be taking notes over here on the left. So you're going to be taking notes. We'll talk about it first, and then you're going to summarize and put into your own words things that will go right here. This will be the bulk of what you write today, and you're going to come up with your own examples over here on the left. But we'll get to that in a little bit. I want to give you a heads up. This is what you're going to be taking notes. This is kind of your product at the end. And then when we watch these videos, you're going to summarize how these videos relate to what we've talked about over here. And your I can statement today is I can give an example of each level of organization in order from smallest to largest. And that's essentially what we're doing here. We're talking about the levels of organization from organelle and cell all the way up to organ and organ system. And I think these are familiar to you. You may not know all about them, but I do think they are familiar. So again, this link will take you here. Let's get started. So, intro to body systems. This slideshow we'll be finishing up later in the week, but today we're just going to talk about the different levels of organization, and then we'll get into each body system, really quick overview of each one, and then we'll spend about a day per body system after that. Every day will be a new body system, maybe two. So, if you'll see up here, we've got an organelle. What are some examples of organelles? Mitochondria, chloroplast, cell wall. So when we're talking about body systems, we're going to focus on the human body system, not even a pig or an owl, definitely not the systems that are in a plant. We're going to be focusing on just human body systems. And so should you give an example of a chloroplast?
No.
Why?
Because it's a plant cell.
Yeah, right, that's a plant cell. That's an organelle in a plant cell. When we talk about cell, we're not going to be talking about animals versus plant cells. We're talking about what kind of specific cell. So in the example that I gave, I put a muscle cell. So in this, if you imagine us kind of going Miss Frizzle's Magic School Bus, we're zooming into the organelle. And then as we're magically getting larger and larger, and that organelle starts to disappear, and we see the cell as a whole. And you see it as a muscle cell. Now, muscle cells are very different than nerve cells. You can't just, if you have a problem with your nerves, we can't just take some fat out of your thigh and stick it up there and it do the same thing as a nerve cell. Fat cells, muscle cells, nerve cells, epithelial cells, all those do different, they have very different jobs. Does that make sense? Is that surprising to anybody? Okay, that you can't like put, if you had an accident and you lost part of your brain, you can't just take some of the muscle from your thigh and stick it up there and it work. Or you can't even take a part of muscle from your stomach and put it to your thigh, or vice versa. They're specific to where they're at. Now there are some surgeries you can take, and you can take muscles or tendons from one place to the next, but they have to be similar enough. So a cell would be an example. What's another example of a cell besides muscle? You say fat cell. Yep. What else? Skin cell. Yep. It's actually the really fancy word for that is epithelial cell. Say it. Epithelial cell. See, people don't know what you're talking about maybe, but you sound really smart. And you're just talking about skin cells. So a bunch of cells all doing the same thing. All of them doing the same thing is called a tissue. Now when you flex, I don't want to scare you. I'm about to flex my muscles. Don't freak out. If I were to flex my muscles, are all the cells in my muscle doing different things? All the muscle cells in my bicep, are they doing different things? No. What are they all doing?
They're all flexing.
Do y'all know what that word is for when you flex? It starts with a C. Because it's called contracting. They're contracting, and then when you let go, they're relaxing. Muscles cannot push anything. We'll talk about that. Muscles are unable to push anything. They can only pull. So they can only pull on each other. And I know that may sound backwards, but we'll talk about it when we talk about muscular system. So a bunch of different muscle cells, if this was a muscle cell, and this doesn't look like a muscle cell, if a bunch of different muscle cells working together, doing the same exact thing, what are they all doing? They're contracting, they're pulling. And in doing that, they are all working together as a team, and we call that group of muscles what? What do we call that group of muscle cells? It's right here, I'm pointing at it. Tissue. What kind of tissue? Guys, everybody, resounding. What kind of cell are we talking about here? Muscle cell. And when a bunch of muscle cells are all working together to do one thing, and they're all doing the exact same thing, what is that called? What kind of tissue? Muscle tissue. Now, this is where it changes. Tissues, a bunch of different tissues. So in your stomach, we're going to go with stomach because that's what's in the picture. Your stomach has muscle cells in it. I don't know if you knew that. That's why you can hear your stomach or your intestines gurgling, because there's muscle cells moving the food around. So that there's a muscle cell. Is your stomach only made of muscle? No. There's what other kind of cells do you think, or tissue do you think are in there? Think about what your stomach does. What are some things that it does? Do you? Okay, so there's got to be some kind of cell or tissue that's producing acid, right? That's putting that stomach in there. Does your stomach communicate to your brain? Yeah. Yeah, that's why you have to be able. Your stomach has to communicate to your brain to tell your small intestines what chemicals to make. Things like insulin or things like bile need to be ready, so when the food goes past the stomach, it can be put into the small intestine, and those chemicals are ready. So there's a bunch of different. Let's just say there's 3 or 4 different types of tissue. There's very likely more. Miss Hurley can't name them off the top of his head, but there's very likely more. So we got muscle tissue. Let's look. I think it's actually on the next slide. In the stomach, you have muscle tissue, you have nervous tissue. We're not going to talk about connective tissue right now, but you can have connective tissue in the stomach and epithelial tissue. So let me kind of say something that's going to be kind of weird first. We're going to consider you a oversized, really complex donut. Have you ever considered yourself a donut? You are a donut. You've said, "Man, I'm a donut." No, you have not. I don't think you have. If I were to show you a donut and say, "Hey, your job right now is to put icing in that donut," would you just drizzle the icing on top of the donut?
No.
Okay, what if I took a stack of 5 donuts and I stacked them up and I said, "Put icing in this donut"? Would you just drizzle it on top and let it just trickle down into the donut? What? If I said put icing in the donut, what would you need? Yeah, something to stick inside of the donut and fill it with whatever. What's that? That's not icing. What's it called?
Jelly.
Filling. Yeah, some kind of filling. Jelly. So if you think about yourself as a large stack of really, really tiny donuts, the top part of the donut, the donut hole, the middle, the top part of that would be your mouth. And at the end of the long stack of donuts would be the exit of your body from your digestive system, which would be your anus. Right? Right? Are we all mature enough to say Uranus and not fall over laughing? Yeah. I see some of y'all holding back laughter. I appreciate the fact that you're trying to exercise restraint. But epithelial cells, the reason I say that is the outside of that donut and the inside of that donut are the same thing, right? It's that nice golden brown dough, magic dough that Krispy Kreme makes, right? The outside and the inside of the donut, of the the donut hole and the outside of the thing, wherever you put icing, that is the outside of the donut. Do y'all understand what I'm saying? Wherever you can just drizzle icing and it touches that part of the donut, that is the outside. But if you think about us as a human, we consider the lining of our stomach as the inside of our body. But it's made of very similar cells as our skin. Because again, we are an oversized, overgrown, really complex, what? Donut. To get inside of us, you have to actually break through the dough, or our skin, from the inside or the outside. And both of those can be really, really bad if you break the skin on the outside, or especially break the skin from the stomach. I don't know if that makes sense to you, and that's not something you have to understand, but I do want you to know that epithelial skins are actually in your stomach. It's a similar scale cells that are on your skin that make up your skin, epithelial cells. They're in your stomach and in your intestines, because your stomach and your intestines are, in a sense, considered the outside of your body. Do you understand? I know that's confusing, but do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, all right, we'll keep going. We may come back to that when we talk about digestive system. So, a cell, we talked about those are mitochondria, chloroplast, nucleus, but since we're talking about animal cells, we're going to stick with animal organelles. They make up, what kind of cell did we talk about? Muscle cell, which make a bunch of muscle cells, all doing similar or different things? Similar things. They make up what?
Tissue.
Muscle tissue. Muscle tissue and connective tissue and epithelial tissue and nervous tissue, all of those and other things work together to make up an organ. So they're doing different things with the same goal. Do y'all understand that? All right, I want to skip. I want to look back at your notes, and I want to look at these 2 videos. So we're going to look at these 2 videos pretty quickly. This is the Hammer Time video that's on your notes. Are they doing different things? They're all doing what? The same thing. Could they do that by themselves?
Yes.
But it would be a lot more difficult, right? If I had copied this dude in the green helmet and replaced the dude in the blue helmet with him, so there's two of him, would it be able to function the same? I feel like it'd be pretty similar because they're all doing the same thing. All right, so this would be like what? Well, we just talked about those different things. These would be like cells all doing the same thing to do a goal, and that goal would be, so this would be individual 4 different cells making up tissue. Do y'all see that? They're doing the exact same thing. That's contrasted with this assembly line. Who do you think of when you think of assembly line?
The guy who first made cars.
Okay, Mr. Davis was explaining he didn't make cars. He created the assembly line. A guy with the last name Benz, I think, was credited with the first automobile or motorized vehicle. All right, assembly line. In an assembly line, if you remember this, one person is putting a tire on, one person is putting the steering wheel on, one person is tightening nuts and bolts. They're all doing different things, but they're all doing one thing. They're all doing different jobs, but they're all doing one thing. What are they all doing? Making a car. So do y'all see how they're working together, doing different things, but with one overall goal? Do y'all see that? That is like different tissues in an organ. So the nerve tissue, the connective tissue, the skin, the epithelial tissue, all of those things are working together with one, doing different things, but kind of focused on getting one job done or one task done. So for the stomach, it would be digesting food. But they're all working together in different ways to do that. Any questions about that? All right, let's talk about this real quick, and then you're going to take notes on your own. Do not write. When it comes time to take notes, you are not writing what's up here. You have access to this. If I wanted you just to have these letters in this exact order, I would just let you copy and paste and put it on yours. I want you to use that space between your ears, and I want you to, oh, that's the wrong slide, I'm sorry. I want you to explain what these are in your own words. Pretend like you're about to explain this to your 5th grade friend, your 5th grade brother or sister, or the person that lives down the road or something like that. So organelle is a tiny structure that carries out a special function. That should be pretty easy because we've already talked about that. So I want you to summarize what an organelle is, summarize what a cell is. Tissues are made of cells that all work together. They're all doing the same thing. Organs are made of tissues that are working together, but they're all doing something different. And then an organ system is made up of different organs together. So do y'all understand what you're supposed to be doing? Okay, go ahead and put that on that next slide and take notes. All right, I do want to show you this. So in the same way that organisms are made of organ systems, and organ systems are made of organs, and organs are made of tissues, and tissues of cells, and cells of organelles. In that same way, our world is, so we have our whole world. If you want to consider this the organism, you can zoom in. This is Google Earth. So we have this country of the United States. It's one of the countries on the globe. And as we zoom in closer and closer, we see the state of Georgia. And then we see Lowndes County. And inside Lowndes County is Valdosta. Let's see if we can find. And in Valdosta, we've got the different, I can't find it, but in Valdosta, we've got different school systems and different places. In the same way that these smaller things, like a bunch of counties make up a state and a bunch of states make up a country, in that same way, it kind of goes hand in hand with what we're talking about as far as organelle, cells, tissues, organ system. We're going to do we're going to kind of double this next semester. We're going to talk about what a bunch of organisms make up. They make up a population, and a population makes up a community. We're going to keep talking and zooming out even further. But this semester, this is essentially where we'll stop. As far as zooming out, we're just going to talk in more detail about these last couple. And organism. We'll have to add an organism to this, but that's pretty much it.